disturb sign or like.
I need a red and green, like on air, off air kind of sign.
Yeah.
Can you tell I'm talking?
Yeah.
Because no one else could last week. Okay, good evening, everyone. You're good. Tonight's work session will be probably pretty quick. We'll just go over the agenda real quick and then have a quick check-in with Cody and probably have a long bathroom break. Okay, so tonight's agenda, we've got minutes from March. And then letter A is a time extension on 15th Street. That'll be consent. Letter B is a category 3 Hillside Permit time extension. It's associated with number 1. So if number 1 is pulled for whatever reason, it may be good to hear and review both of them and adopt both of them at the same time. Although B is a separate item completely, but they are associated. So just FYI. Letter C is a request for reconsideration. We haven't had these in a while for P and Z. So basically you got in your packet with late correspondence on Friday, a request for reconsideration from your decision from last Monday. Excuse me. It is at your discretion whether there was any new information in there or you want to reconsider, which would mean that we would bring this back to a hearing, likely in May, and hold a new hearing. You can certainly advise staff on what you'd like to see differently or any information. Tonight is simply a yes or no kind of answer before you all. There's no public testimony. We'll do a brief presentation from myself and then just a vote, and that's it.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
Hey, Celine, can you just right now, just quickly, if you have it handy, walk through the criteria for reconsideration?
Mm-hmm. Well, I did have it handy. Hold on. It should be in the memo that was attached. So this is coming straight from code. The purpose is to minimize the number of appeals, excuse me, and prevent new information from being presented on appeals and resolve disputes at the lowest possible level. It's applicable upon request. The review body may consider a decision for good cause, and those can include a party requesting reconsideration has relevant information, or that relevant information was not brought up at the previous hearing, or the information was not previously available. And then it goes through procedures of just whether it's approved or denied, and making sure that we notify according to process for notification and things like that.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So Celine, it's interesting that in your memo, clause 2, it says we may consider. So it's sort of, my interpretation is basically we can reconsider it if we want to.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to find that there's new or relevant information. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's completely at your discretion tonight whether you want to reconsider it or not.
We're just hoping to get you on camera. That's why we're all staring at you. So
I agree with staff's interpretation. It is at the discretion of the commission.
Thank you, Mary.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Feel free to ask more questions if it sinks in a minute. You have other questions. Okay, so number 1 is a preliminary plat for residential subdivision on Pheasant Lane, SUV 21-11.
Celine, I think we have another question
I'm
from
sorry.
Commissioner Gillespie.
I'm
Sorry, I'm like, yes.
It's okay. Sorry. I was like, ooh, ooh. So this reconsideration, the commission, all of us, we vote, there's a motion, and everybody is eligible whether they heard the item last week or not. Is that correct?
I believe.
It's not a trick question. I don't know
I
the
know.
answer.
Code is silent on whether those who are present or not can vote or not. My suggestion would be if you weren't here, then you might not vote just because you're not familiar with the request.
Yeah, that would make sense to me too.
Do we have a quorum for that?
I would agree to the extent that if the commissioners have reviewed the packet and feel comfortable and have familiarized themselves enough with the information that was presented last week to determine whether or not any of those criteria for applicability of motion for reconsideration apply, that they would have the basis to vote. If a commissioner feels that they should abstain, certainly they're welcome to do so. But I believe that at least in reviewing the packet, if there's enough information for a commissioner to determine if there is relevant information that was not brought up at the previous hearing or information that was not previously available, they would have a basis to vote.
Thank you, Mary.
And we don't have to worry about quorum. You all are here and present.
Right. Yeah, we
Whether
don't
you
have
want
to
to
worry about
abstain or not is just fine.
Right.
Oh, right, 'cause
Thank
they're not leaving.
Okay. Any other
Looking good,
questions?
Mayor.
Okay, any other questions? Sorry, didn't see you out of my periphery. These masks. Okay, so number one, SUB 21-11 on Pheasant Lane. It's a prelim plat for residential subdivision. We are recommending approval. Again, this is with item letter B for a time extension. That's the associated Hillside Development Permit. We are not aware of opposition, so we can try for consent. Number two is PUD 21-4 on Maple Grove. It's a PUD for a fourplex. We are recommending approval. I believe the applicant will be here this evening opposing some conditions, so I believe we do need to hear number two tonight. And that is a new change just as this afternoon. I believe the opposition is the width of the pathway from 4 feet to 5 feet. But there could be other things there. Any questions on that one? Okay. Number three, excuse me. CAR 21-7, it's a rezone on Broadway from R1C to C1D. We are recommending approval. No one's in opposition that we're aware of, so we can try to approve that on consent.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Thank you, Commissioner Danley.
No problem. I'll do that. No, just kidding. So I've got a comment on this towards the applicant, but nothing that changes it from the need to a consent agenda, just something I feel that needed to be said, if that makes sense. So I think that there's an appropriate way to do that, and I can make the motion if necessary to put it to consent agenda, however you want to handle it.
For item number three.
Mm-hmm. Not at this point, obviously, but when the hearing begins.
I mentioned that we usually approve the consent agenda in one fell swoop. So as you vote or before you vote, you might make that comment and then go through roll call.
Great.
Yeah, great. After we build the consent agenda, usually I'd say, is there any discussion really briefly? But so at that point would be a great time.
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner.
normally that discussion would be after there's a motion.
Yes.
And then you need discussion, and then he talks, and then we vote.
Yeah, good point. So we need that
Okay.
before the
You
motion.
need the motion.
Yeah. Oh, we need the motion first. And then-
Right, because the discussion's after the motion.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, number 4 has been withdrawn. So we will need to note that at the beginning of the hearing because it was noticed and advertised for this evening. But then no motion, no call for comments or anything are needed. We will be hearing number 5. Number 6, CUP 21-3 on Franklin, CUP for a mixed use, personal service and residential use. We are recommending approval. No one signed up in opposition, so we can try for consent. And then number 7, PUD 21-7 and SUB 21-10 on Targhee Street. It's a PUD and preliminary and final plat subdivision for 4 detached single-family homes. We are recommending approval. We can try for the consent agenda. And then lastly, number 8, SUB 21-7, a preliminary plat and residential subdivision for 16 buildable lots on Wichita. We will need to defer that one to May 3rd due to site posting requirements not being fulfilled. So in summary, we've got minutes A, B, 1, 3, 6, 7, 8. Oh, sorry, 6 and 7 for consent. And then we've got C to hear for the request for reconsideration. 4 to withdraw. 8 to defer to site specific or date specific, excuse me. And then we'll hear number 2 and number 5. Did you get all that?
Got it.
Okay. All right, any other questions pop up?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
I feel like this is the appropriate time to bring something to the discussion of our commission since we have a moment before the actual hearing begins. In reviewing the several packages, just since my time back on the commission, something's come to my attention that I think that we as a city need to address. And I think it's actually fairly urgent that we do so. In application after application, we are asked as a commission to make decisions that have the interest and the determination of capacity for public facilities. In our applications, we are granted all kinds of information with respect to transportation, sewer, water, fire, trash services, public health, and other things. When it comes to our school district, however, it seems as though there's an absence of information there that we are not receiving, and I think it needs to be addressed. What I'd love to be able to have a discussion about with respect to council, our staff, et cetera, is to require, frankly, of the school district to, at the very least, submit to the city an overview of the application in question, the schools that would serve the particular application in the site, the schools A, B, C, the capacity that they were built to, listed that out, and the availability of the capacity as it stands today and potentially cumulatively into the future, especially as a development is proposed to have a termination and completion date, so that this commission and our council has that information to be able to make an informed decision and fulfill our obligation as per our zoning ordinance, which flat says that we are to consider the availability and the impact on public facilities, public schools being one of them. So it's a discussion item. I'd love to be able to pick the brains and hear from my fellow commissioners on this issue and see if there's any consent that we kind of generally have and maybe some recommendations to staff to bring this before us at a future date, or any history that may be provided that can further inform this discussion.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So I'd ask Commissioner Danley, he's no doubt aware that I think all the applications we receive do have a letter from the Boise School District indicating that they have no comments or objections to the proposal. Is it the commissioner's opinion to insert our expertise in lieu of the school districts?
In reviewing the comments from the school district, it seems to me, frankly, if I'm being direct, that the comments from the school district are often woefully inadequate. There's no determination of capacity. There's not even an expression of what that capacity is. And the only 2 comments that we generally hear have something to do again with the transportation side and less about the actual facilities and capacity within the building themselves and for the potential students.
Madam
That's what I'm
Chairman.
getting to.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So I'm sympathetic, and I certainly think that, it's my personal opinion that the school board or the school districts could perhaps provide more information. We don't know if they've done the analysis that's behind those comments or not. I have my sum total of school volume or school capacity forecasting can be summed up as 0. I have no expertise in determining things like fire adequacy or road adequacy or engineering adequacy on CFHs or school district capacity or police capacity. And instead, I rely on the departments of the city, which are completely under the control of the mayor to direct as she sees fit. So I have to assume that the information I'm getting from those agencies is generally correct, because to do otherwise would frankly, I don't know what I would do. So I guess I'm sort of curious as to who are your comments really directed at? And I guess I'm basically, what can we do about it?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
When I look at our agenda or our specific packages, for example, we have copious amounts of information regarding transportation typically. And those comments are often calculated by obviously ACHD, ITD, whomever, whereas when we review information regarding schools, the amount of information that's provided to us is to say it's minimum isn't even accurate in my particular opinion. It's even below that, if there is such a thing, to be frank. We get more information on sewer capacity. We get more information on placements of where trash needs to be. When we have public comments that specifically cite or have concerns about schools and the impacts thereof, it seems to me we're sort of flying blind, because the only comment we ever seem to receive is more about the transportation impacts on the school and not the actual schools themselves. It seems to me that's an issue. At the very least, even if it's a single page of information regarding what was the capacity of the school that's serving this site, what does it sit at today, give us some sense, a minimal sense of what the impacts could potentially be, to give us further information and be able to answer the public who's coming to us in many cases with their claims.
So if I might interject, commissioners, certainly brings up a valid point. We certainly can't control how the school district comments, but we can make that outreach and have that communication with them to see, what that process is and how we may help them improve that process, or if they have even the resources or the bandwidth to improve that process. It's fully at their discretion to comment on these applications how they see fit.
Great. Thank you for following up on that, Celine.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I wonder if it would help to have a work session with the school district to understand the process that they go through or something like that, and be able to talk to them that way.
Yeah, commissioners, we can certainly reach out and see if they're interested in that. It will just take some time to pull all of that together and see when they're available and things like that. So we can certainly start reaching out and have that communication with them.
Thank you.
So the other thing for the agenda for work session, it wasn't formally, but we do have our deputy director here, Cody Riddle, just to check in with you all. So before we get late on time, just wanted to give him a moment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, you guys went on a little bit longer than I thought. You were a little chatty. No, every now and then a commission kind of steps outside the lines and we have to come rein them in a little bit. So I had to come this evening. No, in all seriousness, I haven't seen many of you. I suppose Milt running into him on the Greenbelt and things like that. But I just wanted to show up tonight and thank you all for this the volunteer work you've done this last year. It's been a crazy year for us all, whether personally, professionally, a little of both. You're still spending time away from your families on nights like tonight and making very important decisions on projects that make a lot of difference to a lot of people. And so more than anything, I just wanted to thank you for sticking with us this last year, and hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel continues to get brighter. So thank you.
Thanks, Cody. Yeah, are we wrapped on the work session, Celine?
Yeah, I think that's it. So we'll start back at 6 o'clock.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. Sorry, I only get raspy when I'm wearing this mask. There's a chat function in Zoom. Apparently I might need to use it. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. If the chat function isn't available for you, you can email zoninginfo@cityofboise.org. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team, then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person and then who signed up on the online sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you're attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Tonight's agenda and proceedings may have a bit of a delay as we all navigate through the technology. Please be courteous and kind while we venture through this hybrid format. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Celine. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances, and appeals, and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting, so that's why it's important that you give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there's no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few moments ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight, and will the clerk please call the roll?
Then
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Squires,
Here.
Moore,
Here.
Gillespie,
Here.
Benfrock,
Here.
Danley,
Here.
7 present, 1 absent.
Okay, my first note is that item 4 has been withdrawn. This is CAR 21-6 has been withdrawn, so we won't be hearing that one tonight. Next note, we have a request to defer item number 8. This is SUB 21-7 for Wichita subdivision, requesting deferral to May 3rd, 2021. This is 9362 West Wichita Street, preliminary plat for residential subdivision. Is there anybody present tonight who was hoping to testify on this item number 8 that could not return for the May 3rd hearing? Please virtually raise your hand or do so in the chambers. Okay, seeing none.
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
I move that we defer SUB 21-7 to our May 3rd meeting.
Second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner Schaefer. Any discussion? Okay, great. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Then
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Benfrock,
Aye.
Danley,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, without objection, we'll place the minutes from our March 1st, 2021 and March 8th, 2021 meetings on the consent agenda. The next item for consideration of the consent agenda is item A. This is CUP 19-9 for design resource architects, a conditional use permit for an assisted living facility, time extension at 2291 North 15th Street. Is there anybody present that was hoping, or sorry, is the applicant
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie?
I understand, if I'm right, is this just a straight consent,
Consent,
so you can do it
perfect.
without objection?
I had my second shot on Friday and I swear I'm still foggy brain.
Madam Chairman,
Thank you.
even a foggy brain Chairman Stead is better than most of us. So you
We're
just
gonna
hang
get
in
through
there.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, great. So A is on the consent agenda. Item B is a CFH 18-29 for Marquee Development Group. This is also a time extension for 2350 South Pheasant Lane Hillside Development Permit. Is the applicant present? Great. And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Great. Let the record reflect that they are.
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
this is also just a time extension.
Thank you.
So,
Item B will also
but
be
it's
on the
coupled
consent
to
agenda.
item 1.
That note I have.
Okay, so when you call out item 1, maybe we could then loop back and pin this one on.
Oh, interesting. I was going to do it the opposite way,
'Cause-
but I like it.
Well,
Yeah.
this one, item 1, you have to ask people.
Yeah, great. Okay.
So just-
Is item 1 also your application? Great. Okay, so item 1 is SUB 21-11 for Hermosa Hills subdivision, 2350 South Pheasant Lane, a preliminary plat for residential subdivision. And are you in agreement of the terms and conditions of the staff report? Great, let the record reflect that they are. And is there anybody present that was hoping to testify in opposition of item number 1 tonight? Please virtually raise your hand or do so in person. Okay, seeing none, then item number 1 will be placed on the consent agenda. Also, item number B, CFH 18-29 Marquee Development Group. Letter B, excuse me. The next item for consideration of the consent agenda is item 3. This is CAR 21-7 for Kurt Height, 2222 West Broadway Avenue, a rezone of 0.27 acres. Is the applicant present? Please virtually raise your hand. Great, I see Steve Burns there. Oh, wait, I see 2. We'll go with Kurt since it's his name on the application. Hi, Kirk. Are you in agreement of the terms and conditions on the staff report? Please unmute when you, yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Great. Thank you. And is there anybody present tonight that would like to speak in opposition of this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand or do so in person. I do see one hand up from Steve Burns. If we can allow him to speak, Steve. If you unmute, then we'll hear you. And are you here to testify in opposition of item 3 tonight?
Madam Chair, I was trying to get my virtual hand up for the item 2350 South Pheasant.
Okay, you would like to testify in opposition of item number 1?
Yeah, yes, I would.
Okay, we'll pull item 1 and also letter B from the consent agenda. Okay. Back to item number 3. Is anybody here to speak in opposition of item number 3 tonight? Okay, seeing none, then item 3 will be placed on the consent agenda. Okay, the next item for consideration is item number 6. This is CUP 21-3 for Trout Architects at 522 West Franklin Street. Conditional use permit for a mixed-use development. I do see Trout with their hand up here. Are you, once we give you speaking permissions here, I think you'll be able to unmute now. Are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes, we are.
Great. And is there anybody present that would like to speak in opposition of item number 6 tonight? Please virtually raise your hand. Sorry, you're here to speak in opposition of the item tonight? Okay, great. So item 6 we'll hear. The next item for consideration of the consent agenda is item number 7. This is PUD 21-7 for B&A Engineers, Inc. at 5111 West Targhee Street, a conditional use permit for planned residential development. And also SUB 21-10 for Crawl Point subdivision, 5111 West Targhee Street, preliminary and final plat. Is the applicant present? And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Great, let the record show that they are. And do we have anybody present tonight that would like to speak in opposition of item number 7? Please virtually raise your hand or in person. Okay, seeing none, we'll place item 7 on the consent agenda.
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
I'll give it a shot.
It was a
I
little
move that we approve the consent agenda consisting of the following items: minutes from March 1st, minutes from March 8th, items A, 3, and 7.
I will second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner Schaefer. And if there is no discussion, will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Infra.
Aye.
Stanley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great. Okay, then we will get started with item B. This is CFH 18-29 Marquee Development Group at 2350 South Pheasant Lane.
Madam Chair, can we start with letter C? The
Sure.
Request for reconsideration.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to start with item C, CUP 21-5 for Tim Opp, requesting reconsideration for 1675 North Pineview Lane, conditional use permit for self-service storage. And we'll start, I think, with Celine.
Yes, apologies, Kevin, I did that last week to you too. Should be just a quick type consent-like request. So last week, April 5th, you heard, the commission heard CUP 21-5 at 1675 North Pineview for a self-service storage use. We have received a request for reconsideration that was sent in with the late correspondence packet and amended in the agenda for this evening. It's at the commission's discretion to approve or deny that request. If you do approve, we will ensure that adequate noticing occurs and schedule at the next available hearing date. So the item before you tonight is to simply vote yes or no for the reconsideration request.
Okay, we could maybe start with a motion and then if there's discussion. If nobody's comfortable, if we're not ready to make a motion.
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
I move that we deny the request for reconsideration for CUP 21-5.
Second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner Schaefer. Do you want to start the discussion, Commissioner Gillespie?
Madam Chair, yes. Madam Chairman, as everyone will recall, last week I voted against approving the CUP. And so I'm in the unusual position of now requesting that we reconsider that vote. Basis of my motion is that no new information was provided. We had a full and very lengthy discussion of this issue last week. All of the information that we seem to have in the letter and the attachments is basically the same information that we hashed through last week. The vote of the commission was clear but close, 3-2. And just as a general rule, for this commissioner, I'm not comfortable granting reconsiderations unless there is new information or some flaw in our procedure. And while I disagreed with the vote, I don't see that we had a flaw in our procedure. So for those reasons, I suggest we deny the reconsideration and the applicant would still then have recourse to appeal it to council.
Madam Chair, I might just clarify that this was a neighbor asking for reconsideration, not the applicant.
Pardon?
This was a neighbor asking for
Correct,
reconsideration.
correct.
Okay.
It's basically, Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
the requesting party is basically the other properties in this block. They're nodding. I think that means yes.
Yes,
Yes.
sorry, that's correct.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, great. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Zed,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Abstain.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
I,
Finfrock,
Aye.
Danley.
Abstain.
Motion carries 5 in favor.
I will just note for the record too that we had the abstains because they did not attend last week's hearing, those two commissioners. So I imagine.
I think that's why they abstained. They didn't say.
I would imagine they weren't comfortable since they weren't here for the hearing. Okay, great. We'll now move to item A, CUP 19-9 for design resource architects. No, sorry, not A,
Item 1,
B. No, we're on B.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Gillespie.
Is
I'd
it-
Start with 1 now.
Item
Got it.
1 and B.
We're going to start with 1.
Yes.
Great. Okay, this is SUB 21-11, Hermosa Hills subdivision, 2350 South Pheasant Lane, preliminary plat for residential subdivision for 17 buildable and 4 common lots. Please take it away, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I think I can keep this one pretty brief. As you said, it's a preliminary plat application for 17 buildable residential lots and 4 common lots on 17.3 acres in R1B DA and A1 DA zones. Also is an associated time extension request for the Hillside permit that came with it. And really this project is over by Harris Ranch, just north of Barber Drive there. And it may actually look pretty familiar to some of you as it was approved by City Council just over 2 years ago now. And there was a change in ownership and the preliminary plat approval expired. So that brings us here this evening. The actual application itself has not changed. The comprehensive plan has not changed, development code has not changed. So we, up until this point, had not received any letters of opposition and did receive a letter of support from the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association. All commenting agencies did approve of the project with standard conditions of approval. Really, with all that being said, you know, the planning team is still recommending approval with conditions, and the time extension will be extended. That decision is before you tonight, and then the recommendation to City Council on the subdivision. So, be happy to answer any questions you may have, though.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So the approval of CFH 18-29 is not at issue. So it's been approved, right?
Correct. Yes, and it still is.
So that
Madam
didn't
Chair.
expire. All that expired was the final plat of the subdivision.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, you are correct. Yes, the Hillside actually has a 3-year time span, while
Right.
the preliminary plat only 2. So they're just asking for an extension to line up with.
Match.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll next hear from the applicant. We'll start with 10 minutes. If that's okay, please start with your name and address.
Sure.
I imagine.
My name's Andy Cabianca.
You are the applicant, right?
Yes,
For this project? Yes. Sorry, please.
you're fine. Andy Cabianca, 323 West Jefferson Street, here in Boise, 83702. We acquired this property with the intention to abide by the recently expired DA and preliminary plat. So we're coming in front of you guys after meeting with planning and zoning for a new preliminary plat for the now Hermosa Hills, previously Pheasant Heights, with the conditions suggested by planning and zoning. The biggest, our most substantial condition would be as of January 2021, we are required to implement a wildfire vegetation mitigation plan in accordance with Boise's Wildland Urban Interface Ordinance. And so we've been working with ECS that was recommended by the fire marshal to draft this plan and get that up and running. And then in addition to that request, we are also asking for an extension of our currently active hillside grading permit so that it may be aligned in the same hearing as advised by planning and zoning.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is in the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association. Do we have anybody online or in attendance tonight that is here to represent the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association? I do see a hand up there. Just give us a second, John, while we switch you over to speaking. You should be able to unmute now, and please start with your name and address, and you'll have up to 10 minutes.
Madam Chair, John Mooney, 7153 East Highland Valley Drive, representing the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association. Our board met last Thursday evening, as you see in our letter, late correspondence to Kevin regarding Pheasant Heights, now Hermosa Hills. We're in support of this. It's everything as we worked on with the previous applicant a few years ago. We're happy with everything and some minor changes that Kevin has said would be incorporated in the final plat, primarily regarding lot 11, ensuring there's a public access for a possible trailhead in the future going up the side of that steep area there. Our other concern is regarding lot 11, and as the applicant said, the WUI and wildland fire issues and vegetation and making sure there's no fuel buildup in there. Obviously, that was the site of the Table Rock fire back in 2016. So a lot of local concerns about that. So in summary, the neighborhood association is in support, and our board voted unanimously to support this. We didn't have any testimony at our meeting last week to imply that there was going to be any problems, but we encouraged folks to call in and attend this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mooney. Great, so next we'll move to questions from the commission for staff or the applicant or the neighborhood. Okay, seeing none from the commission, we'll next move on to public testimony. So is there anybody online? Please virtually raise your hand if you're interested in testifying on this item. If you're in person, please come right on up to the podium. Okay, Steve, you should be able to unmute now. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name's Steve Burns. I live at 3680 South Shortleaf Avenue in Boise, 83716. I apologize. I didn't see any of the signs on the property until today, so I was unaware of any developments that was happening with the neighborhood association. I just saw the signs today. So I guess I'm wondering from the developer what the plan is. There is a fairly large colony of southern of yellow-bellied marmots that live on that property. And, you know, ground squirrels are not able to just relocate very easily. The conditions have to be right. So I'm wondering, is the neighborhood association asked about that, or, you know, what is the plan for dealing with the fact that there's quite an extensive colony of marmots living on that property?
The developer has the opportunity to respond to questions during their rebuttal, but not at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, so best to just put them on in your testimony, and they can address them as they see fit.
Thank you.
Great. Is it, Mr. Burns, is that the end of your testimony?
Yeah, I mean, that was the big question that I had. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else in attendance that would like to speak on this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand or come on up. Okay, seeing none, then we'll move back to the applicant for a 5-minute rebuttal if you'd like to. Please start again with your name, just for the record.
Yep.
Thank you.
Andy Cabianca, 323 West Jefferson Street, Boise, 83702. In response to Steve's question, we have not addressed the marmot issue he's describing. But what I do know is with our wildfire vegetation maintenance plan, we are trying to work with municipalities and entities such as the Botanical Garden to help reestablish that open space with its native plants and species, help mitigate any invasive, and also create a fire-wise garden throughout that process. That's all I really.
Great, thank you so much. With that, we'll close this portion of the hearing and the item is now before the commission. Commissioner Schaefer.
We are trying to do this on one motion. I move that we recommend approval of SUB 21-11 and approve CFH 18-29 with all the terms and conditions as written in the staff reports.
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
could I ask Commissioner Schaefer to clarify that for the CFH, it's just a straight time extension, not an approval?
Correct. Yeah. That is correct. Sorry. My apologies if that wasn't clear.
Second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner Gillespie. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Well, I mean, real quickly, the time extension is very straightforward. So the CFH item, I think that's very straightforward and just aligns the Hillside Permit with the other platting that's occurring on the properties. And then regarding the main item, the subdivision, I think there's nothing in the staff report that indicates there's any issues. This is the second time now it's been through the process here at the city, and I see nothing that would indicate there's any problems with the application. I am sensitive to the comments from Mr. Burns regarding habitat, and I think the applicant is meeting the requirements of the WUI, and we'll work through that process as they continue to develop the project.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. So
Madam Chair.
Oh, Commissioner Danley.
I just felt it necessary briefly just to commend the applicant and the neighborhood association in particular for working together. It's a rarity in our state that we have actual neighborhood associations. Not everyone can sort of confuse them with HOAs, very different thing. So to the association, the applicant resolving these issues and moving forward on a good path that they all agree on is a thing worth noting. So I appreciate it for all the efforts.
Thank you. If there is no further discussion, will the clerk please call the vote? Wait, sorry, actually, I'll just repeat. This is to recommend approval for SUB 21-11 and approve the time extension for CFH 18-29. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Nunn,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Stanley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great, moving right along to item number 2. This is PUD 21-4 for new design architecture at 3395 North Maple Grove Road, a conditional use permit for planned residential development. Take it away, Mr. Mansfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This item is a request for a planned unit development consisting of a fourplex on about a third of an acre at 3395 North Maple Grove Road in an R2D, that's medium density residential with design review zone. The planning team is supportive of this use in this location as it meets the findings for a conditional use permit. Tonight's discussion will focus on the connectivity and design of the project. Due to the location of a driveway across the street, the parking area of this site is located in front of the fourplex rather than behind it. While the comprehensive plan and design review guidelines generally prefer bringing buildings towards the street with parking areas in the rear, locating the parking area in the front does actually provide some lovely backyard space that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. So considering this driveway placement and the resulting awesome backyard, the planning team is requiring robust pedestrian connectivity throughout the site, as well as a pergola and a picnic area within that backyard space. The applicant has willingly agreed, except for two conditions, which will be the subject of discussion this evening. Condition number 4 requires 5-foot wide sidewalks throughout the development, or pathways throughout the development. And this jives with the generally preferred sidewalk width, as well as with the city's design review standards. Excuse me. Condition number 5 requires a walkway connecting the northern portion of the pathway to the southern portion in the rear yard so that the northern unit can access the picnic amenity without creating an unofficial pathway in the rear yard, which would likely happen as residents and guests of the northern ground floor unit travel to and from the picnic area on the southern side. The planning team received standard conditions, standard comments from commenting agencies. And as such, staff recommends approval of PUD 2104 with the terms and conditions listed in the staff report. Thanks.
Thank you, Ethan. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. This is Marla Carson with New Design Architecture at 725 East 2nd Street in Meridian. As Ethan stated, we are in agreement with the staff report with the exception of the conditions 4 and 5, which are the sidewalk. We would like to propose that we provide a sidewalk to the southern portion of the site to access the rear yard. And the reason that we oppose a sidewalk to the south and to the north and a connecting sidewalk is in general for privacy for the residents. We feel this is a 4-unit, 4-plex apartment. There's not going to be a lot of traffic, and we would prefer for the residents not to have people walking on sidewalks all the way around the unit. And so we think that one access point would provide plenty of access and still allow for the maximum landscaping on the site. And we also think a 4-foot wide sidewalk would be appropriate here, as there's not going to be a steady flow of traffic, so there won't be the need for passing. And we think it would be adequate for strollers or small children's bikes to arrive at the picnic site without having to provide a lot of pavement in the landscaped area. Other than that, we're pleased with the staff report, and we'd like you to consider removing those 2 requirements.
Thank you, Ms. Carson. So next we would be hearing from the Neighborhood Association. Do we have anybody present from the West Valley Neighborhood Association to speak on this item? Representing the Neighborhood Association, please virtually raise your hand, or in person if you're here. Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to questions from the commission for staff or for the applicant. Okay, seeing no questions. Oh wait, Commissioner Gillespie.
Okay, Ethan, could you put the red and yellow chart back up? Thank you. So let me just make sure I have this straight in my mind. So condition 4, it's a little bit confusing with the 4s and 5s. So condition 4 is all of the yellow sidewalks. And the city's view is they should be 5 foot. And the applicant in some places is asking for 4 feet.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, that is correct.
And the, Madam Chairman,
Commissioner
and
Gillespie.
just to get it straight, in the area the applicant would like to be 4 feet is that southern crosswalk at the bottom of this chart. Around the, where it goes south of the building, presuming north is up, right?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, by removing condition number 4, you would remove any of the 5-foot walkways, but I think they are asking, you may want to clarify with the applicant, but I believe they're asking specifically about just keeping that southern strip, as you mentioned, at 4 feet.
But the rest are at 5 feet.
No, the rest would be removed.
The
Rest
condition would be
removed.
removed. Condition number 4 would be removed, which means that the rest could be any width unless the commission chose to
Or they could be
specify.
not at all.
It would be Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, it would be as shown on the site plan without the red and yellow lines. So they would exist as 4-foot sidewalk where shown.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
Mrs. Applicant, what is your take on this question?
Ms. Carson.
Ms. Carson, excuse me.
Madam Chairman, members of the commission, we would propose that we remove the north sidewalk that is accessing the backyard, and then the rear connecting sidewalk shown in red. We would keep the southern sidewalk that is accessing the backyard, and that would go to 4 feet. And the other sidewalks, we have no issues with being 5 feet.
Okay. Thank you. Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So, you know, Ethan, this is pretty small PUD, right? So my understanding is the sidewalks, especially around the building, they're not really for public use. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, you could say that they probably will not be used for the public, considering that backyard is like a relatively private space to be used by the 4 residents of the PUD.
Right. Yeah. And so I guess I'm a little bit like, does the city really feel like it has a strong interest in regulating the exact nature of the sidewalks on, you know, this is internal to private property and not, you know, public space. It's not really even, there's no amenity requirement. Is there for a 4-plex? So I'm just a little bit, I'm struggling to understand, you know, why we're quite being as prescriptive as we are tonight on this one.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, you know, you make an excellent point. Typically pathways, especially when the design review team and committee gets a hold of them, are 5 feet wide. And that's throughout the site. So I wanted to maintain consistency there. But certainly the commission has the ability to modify any of these conditions if they wish.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
in looking at the site plan here, it seems to me that the sidewalk that is up to the north and the portion that's outlined or that is highlighted in red is a direct connection from what looks to me to where the dual entrance to both units are, and a shorter route to the backside to where this amenity is located. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, it is the shortest route from the lower floor unit. The upper floor does not have a stairwell on that north side, so the upper floor unit would be accessing from the rear yard from the front of the building.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no further questions.
Madam Chair.
Oh, Commissioner Danley.
Sorry, it just came to me.
Sure.
If we are also asking if we are actually asking for a reduction from 5 feet down to 4, the portion of sidewalk that is shown nearest the ADA site is now being proposed to go to 4 feet and not our standard 5, correct?
That might be a question for the applicant.
Sorry, I should have meant that, and it was definitely a question of staff.
Oh, for staff.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, it sounds to me like the applicant is in agreement with a 5-foot sidewalk adjacent to the ADA space and in all locations except for the southern piece that connects the patio to the pergola with picnic table in the rear yard. But perhaps the applicant could clarify once again to make sure we're all on the same page.
Ms. Carson, oh, there you go.
That is correct. We would maintain the 5 feet in the parking area and where the ADA parking spot is. We would like the more private portion of the site to be 4 feet, which is the southern sidewalk.
Can the applicant, sorry, Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
can the applicant explain how a 4-foot versus 5-foot sidewalk would achieve more privacy?
I think the concern was just to still have enough area remaining to landscape around that sidewalk because there is a limited space there.
Okay. Seeing no other questions from the commission, we'll move on to public testimony. Do we have anybody? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. First, we're going to check with the neighborhood association. Do we have anybody present from the West Valley Neighborhood Association? Okay, moving on to public testimony. If you're here to testify on this item, please virtually raise your hand or come right on up to the podium. Seeing none, then this would be the applicant's opportunity for a 5-minute rebuttal, but there was no testimony. Does the applicant have anything to add, or would you like to waive that
Red one.
rebuttal? Ms. Carson?
I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We're now closed with the public portion of the hearing, and the item is now before
Thanks.
the commission.
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
it's always the little things that are the most complicated. Have you ever noticed that?
Yes.
I move that we approve PUD 21-4 with all the conditions of the staff report, except in my motion, I would delete condition 5, which is the solid red north-south connector sidewalk. I would leave all the other conditions in place.
I'll second.
Great, we have a second from
Madam
Commissioner
Chairman.
Schaefer. Commissioner Gillespie.
So I guess I just feel like we designed sidewalks 5 feet for a whole bunch of reasons. Some of them arcane, but I sort of agree with Commissioner Chris that like cutting off a foot, I don't get it. Let's just leave it 5 feet. If we could go back to the picture that you had, Ethan, for everybody. I think that north-south connector sidewalk is just unnecessary. And frankly, I kind of agree with the applicant. It's not like we're going to track in a trail on that little lawn back there. People are just going to spread out and play and walk down to the pergola. And if the applicant thinks that putting in that sidewalk would create privacy issues, I'm like, fine. It just strikes me as a little bit of oversteering the boat to get down to that level of requirement. So, I can go either way, but on balance, I would take it. I'd take the requirement out. If the applicant decides they want to build it, they can build it. If it turns out to be an issue, they can go back and build it. It's not a particularly major obstacle to me on what otherwise looks like a good development. And just by the way, the reason why, I'm not sure Nathan said it in his remarks, but the reason why we had to flip the parking lot in the building is because ACHD said that the curb cut has to be right in the middle of the lot. And so, it'd be hard, you'd have a weird curve and turn to get the the parking would have, the driveway would have to go around the top or the bottom of the building to get to the back. And that's kind of kludgy. So I agree with the applicant's decision and the city's support of it. Thank you.
Plus then you get that awesome backyard.
Plus we'll have a super awesome backyard.
Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve item number 2. This is PUD 21-4, but remove condition number 5 at 3395 North Maple Grove Road. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Madam Chair.
Oh, Commissioner Danley.
Sorry, I'm just, you move fast. I'm gonna actually vote against the motion. If you could pull up the same map. As simple as it may seem, knowing this world of pedestrian access, especially around the world of ADA, there's not a guidance out there that would tell you 4 foot is an accepted width or dimension. And it goes even beyond ADA, but regardless, sticking with that, you take that specific segment out, and I understand what the applicant's trying to say, but you also lose connectivity. You lose a flat out convenience that, respectfully to one of the units, you also end up building a sidewalk to nowhere. And anybody who does access that sidewalk that may have any sort of a mobility disability, pushing a scooter, or pushing a stroller, anything, is instantly met with a bit of a challenge that, while for many of us may not be an obstacle, for many and a growing population would be. So for those reasons, I will vote against the motion.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
Just to clarify, my motion is clear that all the sidewalks would be required to be 5 feet. So that really wasn't the issue. The issue is that north-south piece. And my understanding well, I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you for the clarification.
Do we have any further discussion? Okay, so again, this is to remove condition 5, but otherwise approve PUD 21-4. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Dunn,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
I
Finfrock,
Aye.
Danley.
No.
Motion carries 6 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, moving on to item number 5. This is PUD 21-6 for JRS Properties at 2454 East Gowan Road, a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 270 multifamily units and a height exception. We'll start with staff, and please take it away, Mr. Moser.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the commission. Before you is a planned residential development comprised of 270 units and a height exception, 11.2 acres in a C4D and R2D zone. The subject property is located in a regional activity center located at the intersection of Gowan Road and Federal Way. Adjacent to the west is a shopping center, and a residential neighborhood comprised of single family and apartments is to the north and to the east. And to the south across Gowan Road itself is vacant land. The development is comprised of 14 3- and 4-story multifamily buildings, a clubhouse and playgrounds. The site is split zone between the C4 and R2, and the site layout generally locates the 3-story buildings within the R2 and the 4-story buildings within the C4 zone. As you can see on the site plan in front of you, the 3-story buildings are marked in the blue, or at least along the north property line. And of course, the larger buildings are located interior to the site. These 3-story buildings have an average height to their elements of 40 feet, and the height in that R2 zone, which is on the north part of the property, is 35. And then the C4 has a height of 45 feet, and the elevator tower elements of these larger buildings go up to 48 feet. The site design locates, as I noted, that the 3-story townhouse style buildings are along the north property line, which is consistent with the adjacent apartments. And the site design locates the larger multifamily 4-story buildings interior to development. The height exception is included since as mentioned, the building elements such as elevator towers and other structural elements exceed the height of the zone. As such, the height exceptions for these structural elements exceed the height by 3 to 5 feet, not by much. In summary, with conditions of approval, the project and height exception comply with all the required findings as per code. In particular, it complies with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, and also residential densities of 20 units per acre or more are encouraged and anticipated within regional activity centers, which this site is located. The subject property is located also within the airport map area influence, map area B, which generally prohibits residential uses. However, the site is located outside the 65 decibel and the 60 decibel sound contour, as you can see on these maps. So this shows you what the current airport influence is B, shows the property, but the nearest sound contour, the 61, is quite a distance from the site. As such, the airport commented that residential uses could be allowed on the subject property provided specific conditions of approval, such as sound insulation, aviation easements, and disclosure to the tenants regarding airport noise be required. With these conditions, the proposed development will not adversely impact the airport operations. Several neighbors expressed concerns about the project's density and traffic, and I would note that the location is ideal for high-density residential since it is located adjacent to commercial and employment opportunities and within the regional activity center. There is capacity on the adjacent roadways to support the project. I would also note that within your packet, the Southeast Neighborhood Association did submit a letter in support of the project. So in conclusion, the planning team finds that the development and the height exception comply with the requirements of the code and recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Please come on up. We'll start with 10 minutes. Please start with your name and address, and then just go right into it.
Madam Chair.
Sorry, you can pull that microphone up too. So it's a little, there you go.
There we go. Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the Boise Planning and Zoning Commission, my name is Brandon Whalen. I'm with Hawkins Companies, located at 855 West Broad. That's in Boise, 83702. I'm excited to be before you tonight to share with you our plans for what we are calling the Columbia Village Apartments. This shows the vicinity map, and outlined in red is the subject property. As Mr. Moser stated, this is located within 1 mile of the Federal Way and Gowan intersection, which is identified as an activity center. I would also add that I think that we can look at this as an infill project because it was originally intended to be a commercial extension of the Albertsons Shopping Center, but this property has laid vacant for the last 20 years. So it just hasn't been right for commercial development. And so we're excited for the opportunity for this multifamily housing project. As Mr. Moser stated, there are 2 zoning designations on the property. A portion of it is zoned R2 with the balance C4D. And if we were to develop this property to the fullest extent that the zoning code allows for each of these zones, we would have approximately 415 units on the property. But we are proposing 270 before you tonight, which is about 65% of the potential that would be afforded if we maximized the zoning. Also, I would add that the residential use of the property will generate less traffic than if it had developed in a commercial manner. This proposed site and landscape plan shows the features for the site that we are proposing. In the very heart of the property, you can see a clubhouse. Inside the clubhouse, we will have leasing agents, property management. We also have a full gymnasium in there. We have tanning beds. We also have a pool area and a hot tub. Just to the northwest of that, you can see an outdoor play area for children. To the bottom right-hand side, you can also see another play area for the children. And along the northeast portion of the property, you can see a dog park. So we do try to provide a lot of amenities on site for the tenants of the facility to use. The next slide shows some building renderings that we have generated to show what the project may look like. And as David stated, we have some 3-story townhouses on the north and northeast property. We think those will afford some beautiful views of the Boise front. We also have some buildings that are viewed to the south that will actually see the Oahes. So we think this is a very exciting piece of property to develop residentially. David stated that we were located outside of the 65 decibel contour as generated by the noise exposure maps. We are approximately 1.6 miles outside of that, and that's the threshold for what is compatible with the airport operations. And so we are 1.6 miles outside of that line of demarcation, so to speak. And without going into it, you can go to the next slide, actually. David did mention the conditions of approval that the airport had generated, and we agree with all 3 of those conditions, that we have adequate sound insulation, we have avigation easements in place, and then we will also provide a noise impact disclosure to all potential tenants to the property. Next slide again was just showing that we are located 1.6 miles outside of the 65 decibel contour line that is generated by the noise exposure maps. So with that, I would respectfully request approval of PUD 21-0006, and I would stand for any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. First, we'll just check to see if we have a representative from the Southeast Neighborhood Association. Please raise your hand virtually or come on up. Okay, seeing none, then we will move to questions from the commission for staff or for the applicant.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Question, I think I'll start with staff, maybe for the applicant as well. Thank you both for the presentation. The numbers that caught my eye, and I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly, is that it seems to me we have an awful lot of excess parking at the project. Seems like in the report, I think there's 344 stalls required by code, but they're proposing 454. David, is that right? Am I reading that right?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, that is correct. They are proposing that much parking. That being noted, it does not exceed our parking maximum standards, but you are correct.
Okay, Madam Chair, can I follow up?
Yes, please, Commissioner Schaefer.
So maybe I'll go to the applicant then. Brandon, can you walk us through why you're proposing 110 more stalls than code requires?
Madam Chair, Councilman Schaefer, we try to find the balance between providing enough parking so that everybody can readily find a space near the unit that they are renting without providing an excess amount of parking. And it's a difficult balance because of where the property is located or what tenants we are proposing. Sometimes the unit mix, studio, 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom units, all factor into the number of parking spaces that we provide on site. But with all honesty, we're really appreciative of the staff through this process because when we first started, they were not sure that they could support it because of the airport influence area. But in our application, we were really focusing on the noise exposure maps that were being generated by the Part 150 studies. And with that, Mr. Riddle, who was here earlier today, just a week and a half ago, reached back out to us and said, hey, you know what? We have really considered your application materials, and we've come to the determination that residential development on this property is suitable and it does not conflict with airport operations. And if that's the fact, would you take this application back and see if you can take some of that excess parking that we feel you have and bring forth a project that is even more densely developed than what you're proposing today. And we found that to be a very exciting revelation to come from the planning department, and one that we told him that we would absolutely consider. But we told him that we have a contract that expires within 3 days. So we wanted to move forward with the application for 270 units at this point in time, hopefully gain your approval of this application, but then go back to the drawing board to see if we are indeed providing too much parking on the property, and see if there are opportunities for possibly podium style buildings. So we have parking underneath, and that can free up some space for additional buildings. So we're maybe not done with the story before you at this point in time. We might be back shortly with another application that more densely develops this property.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So I'd direct everyone's attention to packet page 225. This is the Boise City Airport's memo. And I'm just going to read into the record the fourth paragraph from Matt Pataya, a memo written on March 24th. The proposed development is not consistent with the interim airport influence area policy adopted in 2020, which allows for residential development in area B1 to be increased from 3 DU per acre to 5 DU per acre, if compatible with the existing residential development in the area. The interim policy does not specifically address influence area B. However, if the same standard were to be applied, this proposed project exceeds the density of the surrounding area. I will just say, as an amateur English teacher, that paragraph is not a model of clarity. So, David, can you try to parse that paragraph? Do you have it? And tell me, what is Matt trying to tell us? So he's basically saying it's too dense. It's way over 5 DU per acre. Is that correct?
That is correct. Madam Chair, members of the commission, that is correct.
He then goes on to say, and he says that 3 to 5 DU per acre bump is in area B1, but then he says the interim policy does not specifically address influence area B. What is the difference between influence area B, the direct object of the second sentence, and area B1, a noun that appears in the first sentence?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, these are two distinct airport influence areas. Area B1 allows for, under our current adopted airport influence, allows for some residential, but at a lower level. 3 or 5, depending on where it falls within that sound contour. Whereas B doesn't allow any.
So, Madam Chairman.
Residential.
Yeah, we can ask Matt maybe to answer this question too. I think he's on the call here.
Well, let me just ask just a clarifying question before I forget.
Please, yeah.
As is my wont.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So you're saying that area B1 is contained within area B?
Two separate and distinct areas. B1 is out towards the other side of the airport. I don't think you see it that much on this side per se. There are two distinct areas.
So B and B1 are different?
Yes.
Just a small chiding. Maybe the city could figure out like colors for one thing and letters and numbers for another.
Noted. Thank you, Commissioner.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Does Matt?
You called Matt?
Yeah. Does Matt have more to add to this question?
Area B, airport influence B, which this property falls within, does not allow any residential development at all. And the zoning requirement was developed prior to the most recent noise study. And with the new noise study information, we have modified some of our policies, specifically in area B1, where we've increased it, and we had not done anything in area B. And so what we're trying to do is be consistent with what we did in that other zone. And we're allowing residential development up to the existing densities that are already there. We're not trying to increase the densities, which would create a precedence where maybe another property is going to increase even more, and then it would begin to have adverse impacts on the airport.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
Thank you, Matt. If the applicant, you can. So I'm just curious, again, in the vein of the, Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So David and Celine and guests, we just had this discussion about the school district and abiding by the expert opinion of the various city offices. In this case, I think we have the clear opinion of the airport that this doesn't fit within their policies. And I'm just curious, why should this commissioner disagree with the airport and agree with the planning staff and the applicant?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, and maybe Matt could further elaborate, but they do go on within their memo to do state that this does not violate the FAA Grant Assurance 21 and that residential is compatible here and that they would be amenable to it, provided that it's consistent with the surrounding area. And there is an apartment complex directly next door to this. This isn't in a regional activity center, which is ideal for supporting this type of density. It is outside of the 65 decibel contour, which is really where that B zone was trying to limit density. But the new sound studies that we have indicate those old surveys are not exactly accurate. So we're trying to adjust for the new data that has not been fully adopted yet into the zoning ordinance. And maybe Matt could better elaborate on, but that's my understanding, that they basically did state within letter that residential uses would be acceptable here, provided that certain conditions were met and that it was consistent with the surrounding area.
I also saw Ms. Hupp's hand briefly raised. I don't know if Matt or Rebecca want to jump in on this one.
Sure, I'll jump in. Thank you. And thank you for the question, Commissioner Gillespie. But I think that it was explained very well that initially the zoning that was developed did not comply under previous noise studies. Under the current and most recent noise study that we have, it is outside of what we would consider the noise impact area. And so we did not specifically object to this request.
Thank you. And just for the written record, that's Rebecca Hupp with the Boise Airport.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
Good evening, Ms. Hupp. So Ms. Hupp, I'm just a little bit confused. Normally when we get a note from an agency and they say it's not consistent with the adopted policy of the city, that usually means, at least to me, that the agency is recommending denial of the application because it's not consistent with, in this case, what Matt called the adopted interim airport influence area policy, which he says was adopted in 2020. So could you clarify what the airport's view is of what your recommendation or your finding is for this?
I would be happy to. So I think the point that we were making in that memo is that the existing policy does not align with the existing conditions today. So the existing zoning has not been updated. The policy only addressed area B1. So we wanted to go ahead and address B. That had not been an issue that had been raised before. And I think it's something that we will look forward to as we rewrite the zoning code, but it's not something that's been done yet. And so when we apply the same standard of outside of the noise contours, this project does meet those parameters. The density is slightly more than the surrounding community. That said, It is outside of the noise contour and it would not be a violation of the FAA grant. So that's what the commission needs to decide is the appropriate level of density. And we do not object to the proposed density.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Not a question, but more of a point is, unless I'm reading it incorrectly, one of the requirements in the staff report is, even though the applicant's proposal is outside of the 60 and 65 decibel area, and especially in light of the new research that's been done on sound levels, one of the conditions is sound insulating. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, although it's outside the sound contours, the 65 decibel sound contour, which is measured on over a 24-hour period, the airport did feel that there might be single noise events because it is still in the flight path for the approaching planes that might exceed that from time to time. And therefore, they thought sound insulation would be something that would be needed in this location.
In addition to that, we have the potential of a notice of a disclosure to tenants of this potential situation as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we have sound insulation and notices going to potential future tenants of what might be an occasional event, but not a regular event.
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Great. Any additional questions from the commission?
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
can we pause for 30 seconds?
Yeah, yeah, sure. We can pause for 30 seconds while everybody collects their thoughts. Yeah, no problem.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
Just a quick question for the applicant. So you'll note the city is asking you to put in 270 bicycle spaces. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Member Gillespie, yes, they have asked us for one bicycle parking per unit. We do have several units that have garages underneath them, all of the townhouses. So we would include their bicycle parking within their enclosed garage. The police department did submit a letter stating that due to bicycle theft, the cost of bicycles today, that outdoor storage racks would not likely be the best scenario. So we're still investigating that. And as we go through the design review process, we hope to have a good, safe solution to that issue.
But Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So you're in agreement with site specific condition number 2, which requires you to okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, Member Gillespie, we are comfortable with all conditions contained within the staff report from the planning department. Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Question to Mr. Moser. I am not aware of, and I did not see in the staff report, any potential transit lines that exist or are planned in this general vicinity. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, that is correct. There are none, and I went to the 2.0 and I did not see any planned.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Just a couple of quick questions for David, for staff. David, if I've got this right, the height variance they're requesting, I believe is 3 feet. I forget the zone. Sorry, I apologize. So the max in the one zone is 45 and they're asking for 48. And in the other zone, what is it? The height, I believe the max height is 31. Is the max 30?
For the R2, Madam Chair, members of the commission, the R2 max height is 35 and they're requesting 40 to a top of a structural element.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. So 35 to 40 and from 45 to 48, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And then, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
It looks like they're exceeding all of the setbacks. Is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair, members of the commission, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
to Mr. Whalen. Currently, the site obviously has nothing on it, but it does have an access, sort of a frontage road that is a bit unusual. Your proposal shows that that will still be connecting, but there will be front-end parking that spans most of this section. I'm wondering if you can address the potential for cut-through traffic in terms of traffic calming and the safety of potential residents.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, yes, we did try to address that. And currently it lines up exactly with Heart Feather Road across Grand Forest Boulevard. And what we are proposing to do is to vacate that right of way. And the access point that is on East Red Cedar Lane that goes into the neighboring development, that's actually on our property, and they have a cross access easement benefiting them. So we're anticipating bringing property or bringing people driving cars in on that alignment. And then it would extend on into the Albertson Shopping Center. And so therefore it kind of off centers between the current alignment with Hearth Feather across Grand Forest Boulevard. So we're hoping that cars that are coming into Highway 21 coming south don't see a red light and then do a quick right and a left onto that frontage road to get into the shopping center, because we've moved that access point a little further away. And so we're hopeful that it'll be a little bit of a deterrent from people that are coming off of 21 and going through. We're also hopeful that people recognize that this is a living environment, that there are people coming in and out, and speeds will slow down. Because when we've been out there at times taking pictures, people do look at it as kind of a free-for-all. And so we're hopeful that the new alignment being a little less convenient for cut-through traffic will help to cut down in the pass-through traffic.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
Just to follow up on the height requirements, and this is the height exemption. This is a question for the applicant. So for the height exemption, if I'm reading the plans correctly, it looks like those are just for those little stair pop-ups, and that would just be an exemption in that R2 zone of 5 feet. And then it's for the elevator pop-ups, and that would just be an exemption in that C4 zone of something around 3 feet, like Commissioner Schaefer had stated.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, yes, you are correct. They are really just the elevator pods. And actually, we were trying to treat them as architectural features. We are trying to do a flat roof on these buildings. And so to break up that flat plane, we were looking for opportunities for a vertical disruption in the long linear length. And so we were trying to get a twofer in that sense with the stairs and the elevator pods, using those also to break up the roof line.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
And so those appear to both be set back a fair ways from the actual primary parapet. Is that also, that's correct too?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, yes, we were trying to, where there were exceptions, we tried to have those internal to the property as much as possible so that we would not have an impact, an adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood.
Perfect. And Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
And then just one follow-up question. So on the, and this might be for staff or the applicant, the surrounding properties, these little white roofs, are those parking structures? It's just covered parking? Yeah, those right there.
Madam Chair, Member Commissioner Moore, those are the neighboring properties garage units, I believe.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any further questions from the commission? Okay. Seeing none, I will slowly move on to we'd move on to hear from the neighborhood association. Oh, I'm sorry, we did that. Next, we're going to move to public testimony. So anybody here that would like to testify on this item, please come on up to the podium. And if you're online, please virtually raise your hand now. Okay, let's start. I see Stephen Leonard at the top of my list. Let's start there. Stephen, once we have you, there you are. Now you can go ahead and unmute. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Stephen Leonard. I live at 3704 East Alta Ridge Court, which is a small street off Highway 21, about 1/8 of a mile from this proposed development. This proposal will drastically change the character of the entire Columbia Village residential neighborhood, which, as you know, is several thousand primarily single-family homes with one small apartment complex adjacent to the proposed property. It's not slightly, the proposed project is not slightly more dense than the surrounding neighborhood. It's a dramatic increase in density compared to anything nearby. I lived in Phoenix from the 70s through the 90s and watched just this kind of development turn neighborhood after neighborhood and the entire metro area from a wonderful, friendly place to live with blue skies and open space and mountains on the horizon to a congested, polluted, angry place with terrible traffic and rising crime and limited visibility under brownish gray skies. I would hope that you consider your first priority protecting the lifestyle and well-being of the citizens who already live here, as well as the profits of developers and increasing the tax rolls. Over the past 5 years, traffic on Highway 21 has already increased dramatically as the population down on Warm Springs looks for escape routes from that developing area. The intersection of Grand Forest Drive, Technology Way, and Highway 21, which is the corner next to this development, is already overtaxed during shift changes at Micron. And this proposed development will exit directly onto Grand Forest a few yards from that intersection, further complicating the traffic. The road that you commented on, that little access road through the proposed development parallel to Highway 21, is presently used by the Columbia Village population as the only access and egress route to the Columbia marketplace. I recognize that it's actually on the property of the people developing this complex, but its presence and availability turns out to have been critical to the development of Columbia Village, whose residents all use that to get to their only grocery store. With this property being developed, everyone from Columbia Village, as well as the new developments around Micron and people going down Highway 21, will have to exit south onto Federal Highway, make a difficult left turn onto Federal, another difficult left turn onto Highway 21, and then circumvent the property, which is going to cause tremendous traffic impaction at both the Highway 21 Federal intersection and the Grand Forest Highway 21 intersection. The question of aircraft noise isn't something I'd really thought about, but anyone who's ever tried to carry on a conversation in the shopping center immediately adjacent to this property.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. That's the end of the 3 minutes as per our code. Next, we will hear from David Becker, I believe. Go ahead and unmute, sir, and please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is David Becker, and I am the owner of Cafe Capri at 2242 East Gowan Road, actually in the Columbia Marketplace. I am also a resident of Columbia Village at 6250 South Basalt Trail in Boise, Idaho, 83716. My comment is very specifically about that road, that access road that we've been talking about. That is a heavily accessed road not only by the residents of Columbia Village, but there are hundreds of vehicles that pass through there every single day. In the summertime, when you're watching recreational vehicle traffic, RV traffic that goes through there, there are tons and tons of vehicles that travel through there every day to get to Highway 21. There's also fuel trucks that go in and out of there every day because that's the easiest access to get to the fuel station. The number of tractor trailers or semi-trailers that traverse that road is significant as well. I have myself 2 semi-trailers that come to my place of business every single week. They have to come in and out through that area. If they had to close that area for any reason or reduce their ability to travel through there, their way to get out is only to go through the front of the Albertson store, where there are 3 pedestrian crossways, and then they're going to have to go to the only other exit, which is on Lake Forest, turn left, and then to catch the traffic light on Lake Forest and Federal Way. They could also go behind the Albertson Shopping Center and come through and access the other entrance to the other apartment complex that is on the opposite side of Albertsons and come on out. But I think that would probably be a difficult traverse for them as well. And it would also interfere with the traffic that's coming in and out of that very large apartment complex on the opposite side of Albertsons. I really don't have an opposition to the building of the apartments themselves, but that access road and the number of parking spaces that are on the left and the right side of that road is going to greatly inhibit the traffic that's coming through there, and getting in and out of the Albertsons parking lot without that access is going to be detrimental to that shopping area and to those that live and work in that area to get in and out for shopping. The main entrance that goes into Albertsons right now is a significant problem. Every day, at least twice a day for about 40 minutes, the traffic that goes from the McDonald's parking lot or drive-through travels all the way around into the entrance. It's backed up on Federal Way, and that happens at least twice a day.
Time.
Inhibiting the entrance in and out of the parking lot.
Thank
So
you,
then-
Mr. Becker. That's the end of your 3 minutes. Thank you for your testimony. Next, we'll hear from Anthony Fundino. Please go ahead and unmute when you're ready. Start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Anthony Fondino. I own the UPS store in the Columbia Village Marketplace.
Sorry, can you give us that address real quick?
Sure, 6568 South Federal Way. I am also a resident of Columbia Village. We're all for bringing more people in. It's good for business. The main thing is that road, that access road. There are only, if we take that out, not going through the other apartment complex, there's only 2 exits for the shopping center. There's 3 entrances, but only 2 exits left. That road that would be coming out, the tractor trailers for Albertsons take that. If you look at the map, I mean, any big rig, boats, trailers, they're all going out to Grand Forest because that is the only access to a light, a traffic light. The other exits, there's no traffic lights. They're very hard, very fast to get across the lanes. I just see it as being a problem. Other than that, like I said, we're all for growth, but I would really hate to see people using the roads through the proposed building plan or through the apartments that are there now. I don't think the residents would want to see people using those roads. They really wouldn't want tractor trailers going through. I don't know if there's any other way to open up another entrance, but I see it being a problem. 5 years ago, when I took over this business, the shopping center was half vacant. the growth in this area. It's 100% full as far as I know. And it's a busy place. That road is pretty heavily used. That's all I got. Thank you for taking me.
Thank you, Mr. Fundino. Next, we'll hear from Rob Stark. Please start with your name and address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Robert Stark, 6865 East Warm Springs Avenue, Boise, 83716. I am a board member on the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association, but I am representing myself as a citizen today. Madam Commissioner, Chairman, Commissioners, while I am not completely opposed to the building of a multifamily housing development at this location, I am very concerned that the traffic volume on the access road between the shopping center and Grand Forest that currently crosses the property is not being adequately accounted and planned for. The revised TIS report dated March 12th shows an existing PM peak hour volume southbound on Grand Forest, just south of Red Cedar, of 104 vehicles. It also shows an existing PM peak hour volume on southbound Grand Forest at Highway 21 of 213 vehicles. This means the existing PM peak hour volume entering Grand Forest from that access road is 109 vehicles. This is the route that residents who live south of Highway 21 in the neighborhoods off of Columbia Road, the eastern part of Columbia Village, Surprise Valley, Canyon Point, the southern part of the Barber Valley, and Boise County use to leave the shopping center. This shopping center contains the closest grocery and gas station to these communities and is also a popular fuel and food stop for people going to Lucky Peak Reservoir and Boise County to recreate. It appears that the easement is going to remain open for this traffic, but that's an awful lot of traffic to be driving right through an apartment complex and will include vehicles towing boats, snowmobile trailers, and travel trailers. This will create a safety issue for tenants attempting to access the clubhouse, pool, and playground, as well as a quality of life issue for those tenants. There is also the concern if this easement is closed during construction and/or once the development is finished due to traffic and safety concerns for the tenants. Those 109 peak hour trips will then have to leave the shopping center to the north, making a left turn onto Lake Forest, another left turn onto Federal Way, and then a third left turn onto Highway 21. This is not an optimal option. I would respectfully urge the commission to require some sort of allowance in planning for this unconsidered volume of traffic that currently flows through this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Do we have anybody else who would like to testify on this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand. I did see a comment in the chat, but just a reminder that the chat is not part of the public record. So anything that would like to be submitted needs to be done audibly here. Okay. Seeing no other hands raised, now it's the applicant's opportunity for a 5-minute rebuttal. Please again start with your name and you'll have 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, members of the Boise Planning and Zoning Commission, my name is Brandon Whalen. I'm with Hawkins Companies. And we recognize that traffic is a concern on that existing access road. As I stated, it feels somewhat like a free-for-all. And that there's cars coming and going, and I don't know that it's patrolled. And so cars, I think, feel as though they have free right to speed and move forward without inhibition. We took that into account. That's why we tried to realign it so it wouldn't be as convenient for pass-through traffic, because we feel traffic's a lot like water, and it's going to go to the easiest access point to get off the property. And so we're planning on some traffic calming measures on that access road, having landscape planners bulb out a bit to provide pedestrians refuge so they have a shorter road to cross. And hopefully that will get vehicle speeds down. And we're also hopeful that they might choose other access points off of the property than this access road that is somewhat uncontrolled at this time. We do feel that, there will be pass-through traffic. The gentleman said there's a 109 peak PM traffic trips, which is approximately 1 car per every, or excuse me, 1.5 cars through there every minute. And so we feel that that's not a burden that should be used to deny this application. We feel that the realignment will help mitigate those issues. We also think the traffic calming measures that we will incorporate will help mitigate those issues. And we're also hopeful that there will be less people using this road because it becomes a little less convenient. Cars that want to get from other neighborhoods into the Albertson Shopping Center just south of this development, there is a dedicated right-hand turn into the shopping center. So people can easily access the shopping center without going through the apartment complex. And if there is any question, well, that is the extent of my rebuttal. We recognize that there are traffic trips on that access road. We have planned to realign it, and we do plan to use traffic calming measures to help mitigate the traffic on that access road. And with that, I ask for approval of PUD 21-0006. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing, and the item is now before the commission.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
I move that item number 5, application PUD 21-006 be approved as cited in with the conditions, with the agreed upon conditions cited in the staff report.
Second.
Great. This is, do we have discussion? Would you like to start, Commissioner Danley?
Sure, Madam Chair. Okay, lots of things to digest here. I think the most important piece of this, in my opinion, with regard to the traffic, there's lots of things on the traffic side. First of all, this hasn't gone through ACHD, nor did they even cite anything in a report yet, and it also has to go through ITD to a degree. They did support this, but lost in this discussion is that this site is zoned in a way that commercial is actually approved by right and would generate significant more traffic than what is being generated by this application. So that is something that absolutely could happen tomorrow absent this project. Another part of this that hasn't been really discussed this evening is the notion of trip capture. A site that is in close proximity to a grocery store, which is one of the more common destinations in residential, will generate a good number of trips that are captured right there on site and likely very much walkable to and from the proposed development. With regard to the traffic impact study, as was stated, frankly, in rebuttal from the applicant, the number of PM and AM peak trip numbers as they stand today do amount to really 2 to 3 at most, in a minute, which isn't very significant. Even in our application here, in our packet in front of us, future LOSs still remain at an A or a B in the 10, 20, even 30 years from now. That remains to be seen, but in terms of a discussion point, it seems as though the capacity is there. The frontage road, as it stands today, I do believe will be an issue that has to be resolved. I think you got to nail that. And I think you've discussed some of your strategies on how best to do that. And then with respect to the noise issue in the airport, I think we've hopefully come to a conclusion on that. And I commend the applicant with respect to the soundproofing and noise insulation efforts, as well as the notice to applicants or to potential residents. I would be remiss on the one point, which is unfortunately our letter from the school district. This is one that may have prompted some discussion in pre-commission, but I certainly would have liked to have seen more from our school district in response to this. We didn't get very much, and hopefully it may end up being a resolution for future applications, but that's not here nor there. One point worth noting, I will say that I think we were wrong. According to Compass, anyway, in their letter that is in our application, the Valley Ride 2.0 does show that this will be site to a future transit route. So with respect to parking, something maybe to consider further, I don't have any changes that I would like to make to my original motion at this point. But at this point, I'll be standing in favor of my own motion.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So I'll be supporting the motion. I think we hashed through the airport issues and we had a pretty clear statement of support from the city staff at the airport. I'd just like to say two things about just generally, and I think Commissioner Chris sort of touched on this, but to control traffic in this area, we need to put housing there, right? There's a bunch of jobs, there's a bunch of services, and the reason there's so much traffic there is because everyone lives far away. So what are the ways, in fact, the best way to control traffic is to put housing where the jobs and the household services are. And this is the place for that. It's got the most dense accumulation of jobs probably in the state of Idaho is right there. So that's an unambiguous good thing and reason to do this. Second, with respect to this frontage road, so this road is on the applicant's property, right? They do have an existing access agreement, which they have to respect, but that respect doesn't mean that the frontage road as it's currently configured is the right of everyone who uses it. It's not. It's an access agreement. And the applicant is making a reasonable concessions to create and maintain that access. Just because it's going to be a little bit more difficult doesn't mean that we should disapprove this. This is a road on the applicant's property and they're respecting the existing access agreement and trying to provide for it. So I didn't find that the issue of the frontage road and the cross access was a compelling reason to deny this application. And in the other respects, I think the application meets all the code requirements and I appreciate the applicant bringing this one forward. And I think it would be a big benefit to this part of the city to get this kind of housing in this location. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Squires.
Commissioner Gillespie stole a couple of my thunderous points that I had hoped to make, but good job. I concur fully with those. The only two other comments that I would perhaps make is if the applicant is going to come back before this commission with a revised application, I would like to see more density. I think this is the appropriate location for more density, and I would like to lose some parking, please. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I'll be supporting the motion as well. I'm going to second and third and fourth the comments ahead of me. Thanks, Commissioner Squires. That was where I was going with my line of questioning regarding the parking. I think the applicant's done a nice job with this project and these parcels. I spent enough time out there to drive past this project site many times, wondering when's something going to happen out here, right? And I think this is a nice fix and a nice fit for that site. Having said that, I think they did a nice job with the layout. I too am not all that concerned about the access drive. With the excess parking, I think they could drop some of those stalls. I'd like to see maybe a little more density. I'd like to see maybe a little more green space, some more amenity space for the residents. And I think they have an opportunity here, a real good opportunity to maybe utilize some of that excess parking to really think through, raised crosswalks across that access drive, really think through some large bulb outs, really study that and make that an amenity that will serve the greater neighborhood and this development concurrently. So again, I'm in support of the motion and I look forward to seeing how they move forward with this project.
Okay. I'll just say quickly, I also am supporting the motion for many of the reasons stated. I also would like to see, if this comes back, I'd like to see less parking, whether that's density or open space. I would take either. The way to avoid congestion and air pollution is just like what Commissioner Gillespie said, build housing close to jobs, shops, and city centers, which this does. Also, to avoid rising crime, build mixed residential types, have apartments near single-family homes and townhomes, and this accomplishes that as well. So I think it's a great project, and look forward to seeing what comes next for it. Is there any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve PUD 21-6 for JRS properties. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Ed,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Stanley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break before we return for item number 7. We'll be back here at about 7:50. All right, welcome back. We are closing out here with item number 7. This is PUD 21-7 for B&A engineers. Oh, no, wait. It's not.
I
Scratch
don't have
that.
to do that one tonight.
Scratch that. Hang on. Okay.
No, that's a new song. I haven't had that one yet. Yeah, that's a new one.
Okay, item number 6, this is CUP 21-3 for Trout Architects at 522 West Franklin Street, a conditional use permit for mixed-use development comprised of personal services and residential. Let's please go ahead and start with staff. You're up, Ms. Rain.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This item before you is a conditional use permit for a mixed-use development comprised of personal services and residential on 0.14 acres in LOHD CD limited office with historic district and conservation district overlay zone. Located at 522 West Franklin Street, the current use is an existing 2,028 square foot single-family residential dwelling. The existing structure was built in 1918 and has been used as a residence since at least 1966. The applicant proposes to convert the bottom floor of the building into a personal service use and retain a residential unit on the second floor. Proposed changes to the exterior will be minor and limited to the rear of the building, where they propose to add an ADA accessible ramp and parking area. The project was reviewed and approved through a certificate of appropriateness and as conditioned will meet the dimensional standards of the LOD zone. In addition, the subject property is located within the Hayes Street Historic District Overlay, the near North End Conservation District Overlay, and the P3 Parking Reduction Overlay District. The Historic District and the Conservation District share many of the same goals, including to serve as transitional area between the commercial intensity of downtown and the predominant single-family residences of the North End. The personal service use is low impact enough to be appropriate in this transitionary zone. As the use is contained within the lower part of the building and the only proposed changes will be in the rear, the historic streetscape and residential status will be maintained. Further, the location is easily accessible by adjacent pedestrian infrastructure as well as by a series of nearby bus stops and meets the parking standards of the parking overlay. In conclusion, the applicant's proposal will have limited impacts on the surrounding area as the use is compatible with the neighborhood, the zone, and the overlays. It complies with approval criteria for conditional use permit and supports the spirit and intent of the comprehensive plan. As such, the planning team recommends approval of the application with conditions. The commission makes a final decision. Thank you, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Rain. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. We'll start with 10 minutes. Please start with your name and address.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Commissioners. Eamon Park from Trout Architects, 2504 West Kootenai, Boise, Idaho 83705. I think that Crystal covered the project quite well. I don't really have much to add other than, to speak to sort of the general use of this area as increasingly mixed use per its adjacency to downtown. I'll also note that there is an interesting threshold in the Boise City Development Code for personal services at 1,000 square feet, and the first floor of this project is proposed to be 1,332 square feet. So under the under that threshold, this use would be allowable at 1,000 square feet or below, and is conditionally allowable at 1,000 square feet or above, which we are just slightly that. So that's really all I have to say.
Great, thank you. So next we would move to hear from the North End Neighborhood Association. I don't think we do, but do we have anybody present that is representing the North End Neighborhood Association tonight? I see a hand up from Eric Hagan. Eric, you can go ahead and unmute now. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have 10 minutes.
Eric Hagan, 809 North 18th Street. I represent the North End Neighborhood Association as their Planning and Zoning Committee member. This use seems to be in line with that area, and as mentioned, it's within the transitory zone, so we don't see any problem with the proposed project at all. I don't need the 10 minutes. That's it.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, great. With that, we'll go to questions from the commission for staff, applicant, or the neighborhood association. Okay, seeing no questions. We will next move to public testimony. So please come on up. We do have somebody here in the audience, and for anybody that would like to testify online, please virtually raise your hand now. Sir, please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Jim Chalfant. My home address is 3950 North Hackberry Way. But we also own there's a vacant lot next door to this proposal where we will be building a home. Our concerns are on a couple of fronts. One is that a salon is by nature almost a retail type of a business where customers or clients will be coming and going throughout the day. And I don't know, and maybe the applicant can tell me, what their hours of operation are. Sometimes salons are open late in the evening, sometimes they're open on weekends. And so it'd be interesting to know that. Additionally, my understanding is they are putting in 4 salon chairs. And so if they have 4 parking spaces, is that enough to handle employees and customers? So those are our concerns. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, last call for testimony on this item. I am not seeing any other hands. So with that, we will go back to Mr. Park for a 5-minute rebuttal, if you'd like to use it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I would. When we had our pre-planning meeting with the planning team, we discussed the P3 parking overlay and reductions relative to that overlay, as well as its adjacency to mass transit and the possibility or the probability rather of bicycle parking, as well as pedestrian traffic. And so the reduction, or the proposed reduction rather, from 6 required spaces to 4 required spaces, we think meets what the traffic requirements or load will be on this project. I will also say that there is a parking garage directly across the street, as well as not that we can necessarily count it against our parking, but 2-hour on-street parking in front of the project. So given its its proximity to downtown and how dense this location is, I think that the parking provided on site should be adequate. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Park. And with that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing, and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we approve CUP 21-3 with all the terms and conditions as stated in the staff report for the reasons stated in the staff report.
Second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner Squires. Is there discussion? Would you like to kick that off, Commissioner Moore?
Madam Chair. Absolutely. I love seeing adaptive reuse, especially of historic buildings. It kind of preserves the character of the neighborhood, keeps building materials out of landfills, and meets all of the kind of some of the spirit of the comprehensive plan as stated in the staff report. On top of that, in terms of the parking, with the availability of on-street parking, parking garages, and the location near downtown, I'm perfectly comfortable with the amount of parking that's available for employees and for visitors there, and the relatively low intensity of the use. I'm comfortable with kind of the whole layout of that just because of its particular situation.
Great, any further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Squires.
I will just say that I concur with what Commissioner Moore said. This is a very low intensity based use. I do like the transitional use of this neighborhood and of the uses. I think this is very appropriate for the location and applaud the applicant. Thank you.
Great, okay, seeing no further discussion, we have a motion to approve CUP 21-3 at 522 West Franklin Street. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead.
Aye.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Squires.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Gillespie.
Aye.
Finfrock. Stanley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.